Good morning, people. Good to be with you again today. Hope you're in for a good Friday. Listen, we've been talking about 2 Timothy, the letter that Paul wrote to his young protege, Timothy. Paul, stuck in prison in a miserable situation, is now handing over the baton to this young man. And he's giving him all the instructions and the advice and the wisdom that a man who's been through so much is entitled to give. And so Paul is pouring out his heart to this young guy while he sits in a stinking prison. Now, we talk about the greeting that he gave to Timothy right at the beginning. And he greets Timothy, and then he speaks about grace, mercy, and peace that is given by God. Grace, mercy, and peace. Well, I'm going to tell you, if there's one thing that we need right now, if there's 3 things we really need right now, that's them. We need grace from God, we need mercy from God, and we need peace with God. But as much as our thesis is similarly about, not just about those 3 things, but our thesis is simply based on the fact that if you have received of those things, if you have received of grace, mercy, and peace, there has to be some evidence in your life simply by the fact that you are willing to give grace, mercy, and peace. Now, this is not going to be a popular devotion with many of you, and some of you are going to battle, as I have, with this particular thing. But let me say this very short and bluntly to you. People, if you have received grace, mercy, and peace from God, you better give it to those around you, to those who have disappointed you, to those who have disillusioned you, to those who have brought you into places of despair and depression. You better give grace, mercy, and peace for 2 reasons. The first reason is they need it as much as you did. And the second thing is you need to give it because it's good for you to give. So many people today are just battling with ill health, and I think sometimes the challenge of our emotional well-being affects our health. So if you could fix this thing, this could be the root of the fruit that is evidencing itself in physical manifestations. Now, I'm not trying to be some fancy psychologist guy, but I want to tell you, people, when we start to give grace, mercy, and peace to the people around us, watch what happens to you. All of a sudden, a spring returns to your step. Energy comes flooding in, and all those things that drained you now become things of the past as you use your energy on good things and not feeding the bad things. Now, if you look at grace, mercy, and peace, as much as you needed to get them, you need to give them as well. Jesus told, for me, probably one of the most frightening parables. They call it the parable of the unforgiving servant. And the servant was seen by who went into his master, probably the king or something like that, and he borrowed a whole bunch of money from the king. And the king said, "No, it's cool, I'll loan you the money, just repay me sometime." Anyway, that sometime came. And the king saw the servant in his court, and he said to the servant, "Hey, don't you owe me a whole bunch of money?" And this man said, "Yeah, king, I actually do, and I haven't repaid you." He says, "Why haven't you repaid me?" And he gave him the proverbial sob story. "Oh, king, you don't understand. You know, the economy's bad and corona's hit us, and my kids failed their exams. We've got to do this thing again, and business is bad, and Eskom hasn't played the game, and I've got no water in the house. King, you know, it's been a tough year." And the king said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. I'm going to forgive you the debt that you owe to me." The man couldn't believe it. He looks at the king and said, "You mean that?" The king said, "You can leave from here a free man." Now, this guy was delighted because he owed the king a lot of money. Anyway, he leaves from the courtroom, Jesus says, and he goes outside, and probably one of the courtiers followed this guy out by accident, and he saw something strange. He saw the same man who'd just been forgiven a great debt see a guy across the road who owed him just a few rand or a few dollars or something. So he goes to this guy and he throttles him, and he says, "Give me what you owe me, or else I'm going to have you thrown in prison." Same words that the king said to him, but he was forgiven that great debt. The courtier goes back into the presence of the king, and he's shaking his head, and the king probably said to him, "My man, Oh, what's wrong? He says, King, you won't believe this. But you know that guy that you've just forgiven a great debt? You don't believe what he's doing. He's outside here throttling somebody to get to death because he owes him a minuscule amount. So the king calls that guy back in, says, bring him to me. And he says to this man, you will now pay every cent you owe me. And Jesus climaxes that whole parable by saying those who have received need to give. And if they don't give when they have received, go and read what the punishment is. It's a whole miserable thing. So people, it's a new year. It's a new year. You don't want to carry last year's baggage with you, do you? You don't want to get bitter and twisted and miserable, do you? You've done enough of that. It's tired of that now. It's time now to give grace, mercy, and peace to those who need it. And you're saying, Trev, I don't want to listen to this devotion. In fact, I'm never going to listen to your devotionals ever again. I'm offended. You don't know what that guy did to me. You don't know what that woman did to me. You don't know what those people said about me. Trev, you don't understand how much I have been hurt. And I'm not being arrogant or unkind when I say I don't care how much you've been hurt. Because when you have been hurt personally, more than you personally have hurt Jesus, only then do you really have a case. Because the hurt that we caused to Jesus was enormous. It took all our sin. And when we have been hurt more than we've hurt Jesus, then come and tell your story. But I don't think one of us is able to say that. So this year, let's begin the year, people, by giving grace, mercy, and peace as evidence that we have received from God grace, mercy, and peace. Have a great day, and I'll see you again on Monday. Bye-bye.